Good morning, Bridgeway. How you doing? If I can still say Happy Thanksgiving, I'd like to do that. Happy Thanksgiving. We are wrapping up our Gratitude Mandate series. We've been doing this the entire month of November. I think it's been really fun. We've been talking about what it would look like to give thanks in all things, in all circumstances. And so we're going to be talking about that once again this morning. But I want to introduce myself. My name is Seth. I am the pastor of discipleship here. I'm also the Peoria church plant resident here. And so we're going to be building a team and planting Reachway Church in Peoria in the fall of 2019. That's what we're shooting for. So if you have any Peoria connections, if you live in Peoria, if you know anyone who lives in Peoria, if you know anything about Peoria, I would ask that you would find me. Let me know about your thoughts on the city. My wife and I just moved there in August, and so we're still trying to get to know the city. My wife teaches on the south side of Peoria. She's a third grade teacher there, and we are excited about getting to be a part of what God is already doing in that city, that beautiful city of Peoria. And so I would just ask that if you have any Peoria connections, let me know. I probably haven't met a lot of you, still trying to get to know some faces and some names and some families, but I am excited nonetheless to be with you this morning. This is actually my fourth Thanksgiving being a pastor at a church. A little bit about me. I have been in ministry for about 4 years. I was a youth pastor in Chicago Heights, Illinois, which is a couple hours northeast of here. And then I was at a church in Joliet, Illinois, doing a lot of what I do here with small groups and discipleship and things like that. And now we're here. But this is the first time where I've been able to preach on Thanksgiving weekend, and I'm excited to do that. And I know enough by now to where if I really just wanted a home run of a sermon, that the title of my sermon would probably be something like 10 Reasons Why We Can Be Thankful Today. Or reasons why we can be thankful this Thanksgiving season, this Thanksgiving week, this Thanksgiving holiday. But I'm not interested in a home run sermon. Because this week, if no other week, should be a very easy time where I can convince the saints of God why they should be thankful, right? Because we talk about this all the time. We talk about in church and churches all over the place that we are called to be thankful. We spent a whole month talking about it here at Bridgeway. And another reason why I don't want that to just be my sermon is because I could, this week in particular, probably talk to anyone out there on the streets, in the stores, in the malls, and this particular week of the American calendar to convince them why they should be thankful. I would have a very easy time doing that because it's Thanksgiving and all of the shows and the things we see on social media, it's all driving towards this corporate mentality of giving thanks, which is good. But really what my burden is, what my concern is the other 51 weeks out of the calendar year. We have Thanksgiving week, right? And the holiday is always a mixed bag. For many, it is the first time without someone. For other families, it's the first time with someone around the table. And then everywhere in between, we have these emotional highs and lows. Giving thanks often gets lost in the mix of things that we choose to do, things that we decide to do. But what I'm concerned about is next week. And when Christmas rolls around, and next year, and next spring, and next summer, when we go through the ebbs and the flows of life, with our Thanksgiving holiday way in the past, and the next one to come way in the future, and we're caught in this tension where the culture around us isn't giving thanks like we're called to every single day. Because here's the deal. Is that the culture we live in, the world around us, is not necessarily a give thanks first type of culture 51 weeks out of the year. For 1 week, we nail it. That third, fourth week of November, as a broad culture, we do a good job at giving thanks. People talk about it the most that they do throughout any time of the year. But there's always next week. There's always next month. There's always next quarter. And that's what I'm concerned with, because we're not going to get the help from the broad culture of what it would mean to give thanks. And so that's kind of where we enter in this morning. But I also want to make a distinction that I see between being thankful and giving thanks. In 1 Thessalonians, we read that we are to give thanks in all things and in all circumstances. And this month, we've talked about the difference between giving thanks in all circumstances and giving thanks for all circumstances, because there are some circumstances that we encounter that we don't want to give thanks for. And so we made the distinction between what it would look like to give thanks for things, which, if we're being honest, is probably not a whole lot, but the difference being giving thanks during those times, in all things and in all circumstances, within the lows, to still give thanks. But I want to identify this morning perhaps a difference between being thankful and giving thanks. Both are good. They are a dance that work together. I would call being thankful an inward expression, kind of an inward condition of the heart and the soul, where if you were to walk up to me kind of at any time throughout the day or the week or the month, and you were to ask me, Pastor Seth, are you thankful? I would say, yes, I consider myself to be a thankful person. But giving thanks would be something that you would be able to recognize without even asking me. Something that has to do with the way I carry myself, the words that I choose to use, the topics that I choose to talk about, the decisions that I choose to make. You would be able to detect me giving thanks as an outward expression. And I feel that both are good, but I also feel that we do a way better job of being thankful than giving thanks. I think I could walk up to any of you at any time throughout the year and say, hey, are you thankful? And you would be able to look inward for just a moment and say, you know what? Yes, I am thankful. But when it comes to this outward expression of giving thanks, this is an expression that our communities desperately need. This idea of giving thanks and our words and our actions and our decisions coming from a place of thanksgiving to where people can actually see it without having to ask if we are thankful is an expression that our workplaces desperately need. It's an expression that our neighbors desperately need to see 52 weeks out of the year. And so all of a sudden, Thanksgiving becomes a lifestyle rather than a holiday week. Are you with me? This idea of Thanksgiving is not something that we circle on the last Thursday of November or the third Thursday of November. It's not marked by time off of school and vacation from work. Thanksgiving becomes something that goes to the forefront of our minds every single day of the year. It becomes a lifestyle. And this outward expression of giving thanks becomes something that everyone around us can see and influences their thanks as well. And so a logical question would be, what on earth does that actually look like? And I want to look at a psalm in just a moment. If you're unfamiliar with the Psalms, it's kind of this chapter of poetry in the middle of your Bible. A lot of times people find it literally by finding the middle pages of their Bible and opening it, and you might have to turn to a page here or there, but it's this book of Psalms, and we get this type of literature, this type of poetry that is unlike any other words of Scripture that we see in the rest of the Bible, Old or New Testament. It's really beautiful. Written by several different people, and they take the form of hymns, they take the form of poems. I like to call some of them journal entries, and we're actually going to look at a journal entry in the Psalms later this morning. But I want to look there and look at Psalm 100 as something that might be able to shape what it would mean to embody thanksgiving and therefore give thanks. So let's look at this together. Psalm 100 says, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. So if that is the picture of 52-week Thanksgiving, a question that I ask is, how on earth is that possible? Because, Pastor Seth, I just lost my job. Pastor Seth, my car just broke down. I just lost a loved one. And the list goes on and on and on of reasons we give ourselves as to why Psalm 100 cannot be a reality for us. There will always be reasons why it can't, right? Always be reasons why it can't, but this morning I want to uncover maybe just one reason why it could be. Something that's not operating as our culture sees it, but something that people who have devoted themselves to maybe this higher calling, this higher purpose, could walk and carry with them for this 52-week lifestyle of thanksgiving, of giving thanks. And so for a kind of mysterious passage like Psalm 100, I often find that asking questions about the passage, relying on truth that might be in the passage, or just grabbing onto one phrase or a collection of words in a passage like a psalm can really help us uncover what's actually going on. And the phrase in Psalm 100 that I want to highlight this morning is that we are the sheep in his pasture. And there's some mystery there because none of us are actual sheep. Yeah, none of us are actually sheep here this morning. But it is making a statement about who we are. There is actual truth being spoken over us in Psalm 100. And there is this declarative statement that is being made that you are the sheep in his pasture. And so a logical question to ask would be, well, what does it mean to be a sheep? Or what does it mean, for this morning's purposes, to be a good follower? And if we were to ask that question, then I'm afraid that probably we wouldn't necessarily go to Scripture for the answer. What we would do is we would go on Amazon or go to Barnes & Noble and go to the self-help section and find a book that was probably titled a lot similarly to what I could have titled this sermon, 10 Ways to Be More Thankful. 5 more practices that you can pick up in order for people to think that you're just a bit more thankful than maybe you normally are. But that's not the direction I want to go this morning. And I don't think that would be a direction that can sustain us for 52 weeks. So, a question that I ask is, who is this shepherd? Right? We are the sheep to his pasture. Who is the his? Who is this shepherd of this flock in which I am part? And we turn to this guy we talk about a lot, Jesus. He refers to himself as the good shepherd. And I actually want to look at a passage of Scripture, the Gospel of John chapter 10, where Jesus says this: I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, that's us, and my sheep, that's us, know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. That's us. He's talking about us. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen, and I like to add the word yet. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. This is what Jesus says, referring to himself as the good shepherd. And when the psalmist in Psalm 100 writes that we are the sheep of his pasture, the his is the good shepherd Jesus that is revealed to us in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and talked about in the remainder of the New Testament. And so we desire to know that shepherd. That's the good shepherd that I want to know. And that's the one that I want to follow and be guided by. And so we continue to move on, and this morning I want to say that when we're talking about a shepherd this morning, we're going to say it takes one to know one. If we are trying to get to know the Good Shepherd Jesus, then I'm going to say it takes a shepherd to know a shepherd. And since none of us are shepherds, we actually look to David. And if you're a second career person in here, maybe you entered the workforce doing one job, and then maybe you went back to school or got a different certification or another degree, and now you're doing another job. David, same exact thing. He's a second career kind of guy. The second career is generally what we focus on, that he was a king. Now, this is the same David who slayed Goliath. We looked at that story just a few months ago. But before he was the king in charge of all of the armies and the palaces and whatever, he was a shepherd. He was a shepherd boy. And actually, right before he was called out and he approached Goliath, he left the sheep pen, right? He was a shepherd up until this moment, and then he's identified as a great leader. And then he moves on into this life. And there's a lot that happens in his life post-shepherd boy, including being a ruler of armies and a king, which is great. He also had an affair. Not great. And then he was in charge of many powerful people, and then he ruled well. But when he had that affair, he actually got the lady pregnant, and to cover it up, he had her husband killed. Not good. Not one of the things that we highlight a lot. And while he was leading those armies and ruling, he actually had his own son lead a rebellion against him. Once a shepherd, now this king, having a lot going on, the hills and the valleys that a year could present. But this is the picture I want to paint, is that King David is on his front porch, and there's a field that he overlooks in front of his house, and he's got his coffee, and he has his journal, and he's entering into his morning time of prayer. And he all of a sudden sees the sheep, and he has this out-of-body reflection, this experience, where he reflects on his entire life, starting as a shepherd boy with those same sheep out there, reflecting on the hills and the valleys that he's been a part of. And he gets his journal out, and as he looks into the distance of the sheep, kind of following each other and being shepherded by someone else, perhaps a nephew or a grandson, he says, you know what? The Lord is my shepherd, and I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He leads me along the right paths for his name's sake. And even though I do walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for he is with me and has been with me. His rod and his staff has been comforting me all the day long. He has prepared a table before me in the presence of my enemies, including my own son. He anoints my head with oil, and my cup of blessing overflows. And surely his mercy and goodness and his love will follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He writes this in his journal. And thousands of years later, we call that Psalm 23. It's in the book. Psalm 23 is this contemplative moment of reflection that David encounters in his retirement, where he looks back on his life once as a shepherd, but then seeing how God has walked with him and carried him through the highs and through the lows. And it's this psalm, Psalm 23, this journal entry, this reflection of David, that I actually want us to dig through a little bit more, because I think it can be a great tool for us as we receive and accept and step into this call of 52-week Thanksgiving. And we start with that very first line, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." And that's a big old statement. And what I want to do, like many teachers do, is let you know that there will be homework at the end of this. Week 1 of this series, Pastor Jeff encouraged us to write 3 thank you notes. And we continue on with this homework thing. I want to let you know that at the end of this sermon, in about 15 minutes, your homework will be to memorize Psalm 23. And I'm going to explain to you why. But the reason I tell you that before the end is because these next couple of minutes, when we hash out what's going on in Psalm 23, I want these things to stir up in your mind as you memorize and recite and pray day in and day out Psalm 23. Because there's a lot going on in here that is below the surface. There's a lot going on here that is between the lines. And so David says that the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. David is not necessarily just revealing to us another function that the Lord plays. He's not saying that the Lord is my comforter and he is also my protector. Oh, and he's also a shepherd. What David is doing, and he's making a declarative statement of who his shepherd is. Now, David's not a sheep either, just like you and I. So when he is talking about having a shepherd, he is talking about the Lord being his guiding force. The Lord being the person who shapes his day in and day out. The Lord being the person that he sets his eyes on even in the valleys. And he doesn't forget him when he's on the mountaintop. Declaring that the Lord, not anything or anyone else, is his shepherd. And so, if we claim the Lord as our shepherd, then that is a countercultural expression of trust, dependence, and guidance. Because this is the reality, is that there are a lot of shepherds in the world. Now, we're not sheep. People out there aren't sheep. Sheep are sheep. But could our jobs be our shepherds? Could a certain relationship that we find ourselves in be the actual thing that is guiding us day in and day out? Could it be a news network or a Facebook friend or someone we follow on social media being the actual thing that is guiding us in our lives? Who's your shepherd? David says that it is the Lord who is his shepherd. And David is making a statement that even today would be a countercultural one. Saying that there is not another person, thing, entity that shapes me and molds me and guides me along in life. It is the Lord who is my shepherd. And I want to say this. If there is another Lord, or if there's another shepherd in your life that isn't the Lord, I would argue that if your shepherd is anything other than Jesus, that you will always lack something. Something. At least one thing. And giving thanks will be the last thing that you will want to do. David says, I hope we can say this morning too, the Lord is my shepherd, and because of that, I lack nothing. David goes on to say that he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. And what this is a positive consequence of the Lord as our shepherd. Consequences can be good. The Lord is my shepherd. He is the one who shapes me and molds me and guides me and leads me along in life. And because of that, I find opportunities for rest and refreshment and peace and stillness. in the midst of chaos. Oh, man. But how is that happening? The Lord being your shepherd. As a result of that, he is leading you. And we use imagery like we would with a shepherd and sheep of being in a lush green pasture and being led beside a river so that they can get drinks and refresh themselves. And we use that imagery, and that imagery is sometimes difficult because there's not a lot of rest that happens at the 40, 50, 60, 70-hour-a-week job. There's not a lot of rest that can take place with the supervisor and the manager and the CEO and the boss who is giving us task after task after task, or the relationship that continues to pull and pull from us that seemingly doesn't ever give back to us. Is anyone with me this morning? There's no rest out there. There's not even a moment where we could wedge ourselves in and find a place of comfort. And that would make 52-week Thanksgiving very, very difficult. Because there's no break. There's no break in the cycle. There's no break in the action. David goes on to say that he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake, and that even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And here is probably the most well-known phrase in the most well-known psalm, this idea of walking through the darkest valley. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And then everyone starts thinking about Gangster's Paradise by Coolio. That song from the 90s. And I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding. Anyways, Coolio the Contemplative gives us this idea, this relatable expression that there are always valleys. There are always these shadows of death, and Jesus is actually a part of one later on in the Gospel of John, chapter 16. He's towards the end of his ministry, and he's got his disciples with him, the people that he has been living with. And they're sitting down, and they're having breakfast or something, and Jesus has been talking about that he is going to be crucified. And he's been using this imagery that he will eventually leave earth. And some of the disciples are starting to get it by this point, but some of them still aren't. And so Jesus is pretty forthright in John chapter 16. And then he says to the disciples, he says, you all need to be prepared to be run out of the temple. Because if you carry on the message that I have been asking you to carry on, people are going to hear it and they're not going to like it. Jesus goes on to say that because of that, you need to be prepared for your martyrdom. You need to be prepared to die because of this message that I am asking you to give. And after he drops those things on him, he says, and by the way, I am leaving earth. Talk about a dark valley for those disciples to be in. And later on in that chapter, Jesus says this phrase. He says, fear not, for I have overcome the world. In this world you will have trouble, but fear not, I have overcome the world. And what David does in Psalm 23 in his journal entry is he allows us to believe and see that even though troubles come, that he is with us, and he is walking with us. And that even though we walk through the darkest valley, that he has been with us the entire time. Jesus then says, he admits it, and he says, you're going to have some trouble. In this world, you're going to be in a dark valley. But fear not, I have overcome the world. But this is what often happens a lot of times. Is that people who are shepherded by the world look to the troubles that they see, and they respond to those troubles with tools of the world. People who are shepherded by a worldly shepherd respond to the troubles of the world with the tools of the world. And that is a mess. That is a recipe for disaster. So this is how that often plays out. Is we hear Jesus admit and say, in this world you will have trouble. And then we say, I know. That's why my financial portfolio is diversified. We hear Jesus say, in this world you will have trouble. And we respond by saying, I know, that's why I chose to live in this town instead of that town. And I chose to live on this street instead of that street. And we read Jesus say, in this world you will have trouble. And then we say, yeah, I know. That's why I just got this really nice security system for my house. And in this world you will have trouble. And so I know, that's why I have a gun in my nightstand. And we completely ignore the promise that Jesus gives us in those troubling times, which is his presence, his peace. And so those shepherded by Jesus have a completely different outlook on life. Those shepherded by Jesus respond to the troubles of the world with a different tool, and it's a lifestyle, and that is a lifestyle of thanksgiving. Those same exact troubles that anyone else approaches, see, the troubles aren't different for people who are shepherded by Jesus. Troubles aren't different for anyone else. The troubles of the world are the same. It's all about who your shepherd is. It's all going to be who you declare your shepherd is. Is it the Lord or is it something else, someone else? And we respond to those same exact troubles with a lifestyle of thanksgiving. So then this is what ends up happening is Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble, and you say, you think I care about that? Jesus has overcome the world. Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble, you will walk through dark valleys, and you say, I do not care about the dark valleys because the light that my Lord shines so much brighter than that darkness. And he's walking with me, and I'm walking with him. And as a result of that, I am able to give thanks. And week after week and day after day and month after month of that kind of a lifestyle, we are then able to declare like David did, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. My enemies are many, but you got me. You anoint my head with oil, my cup of blessing overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my year, all the days of this month, all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He will dwell with me. I will dwell with him. You see, when Jesus is your shepherd, when the Lord is your shepherd, you're walking with him and he's walking with you, he lavishes you with his grace. As you approach hurdles in life and hiccups and dark valleys which are coming, if you're not already in one, with the Lord as your shepherd, you are able to say, I do not care about what comes my way because there's someone who's going with me. There's someone who's already been there. He's already been in the grave and he walked out. And he's with me now. So I can approach that. You see, the presence of the shepherd, the presence of the Lord Jesus, shepherd, is an eternal presence. And when that presence is with you, we then have the ability to give thanks in all things. And 52-week Thanksgiving becomes a walk in the green pasture with your Jesus. Stuff comes your way and you say, I'm not worried about that because Jesus is with me. You're able to give thanks and be thankful. And there's nothing else in the world that can do this. There's not another shepherd that you encounter day in and day out that can offer you the same thing. They promise a lot. But there is not another shepherd that can deliver the same amount of comfort and presence with the same amount of faithfulness and steadfastness that our God can. There's nothing else that can do that. And so we come to the homework time. We come to the quiz and we come to the test. And I want to encourage you to memorize Psalm 23. But here's why. Not just to do it. It's not like math in high school where we said, I'm not going to use this in real life, so I'm not taking math, right? No, this is real life. This is day in and day out stuff that you will carry with you for the rest of your life. Earlier we talked about how our workplaces and our communities and our neighbors desperately need an outward expression of thanksgiving. And so if you're able to memorize Psalm 23, if you are able to bring out these words by memory, to think it or to say it or to pray it, day in and day out, then you are going to be a blessing to people who desperately need to see someone else give thanks even when times are rough. You are going to be better equipped to be missional agents in the world, to your neighbors, to your coworkers, to the people you encounter at the grocery store and in the marketplace. If you are able to allow Psalm 23 to be this thing that invokes in you all sorts of good feelings, all sorts of confidence and trust in God, then you will be a blessing to the brothers and sisters that you meet every single week here at Bridgeway. Because, folks, there are times when we are not feeling it. And then that one person walks in and they're always thankful, and you're like, man, that person's so annoying. Because they're always thankful. Imagine if that was all of us. We wouldn't be annoying each other anymore because we'd all be thankful. We'd all be giving thanks, and we'd be able to encourage and encourage and encourage and encourage. And when someone in your connect group or your family or your friend circle or someone you never even met before just kind of randomly opens up to you, you are able to come alongside them and say, brother, sister, the Lord is your shepherd, is he not? And what does that mean? That he's walking with you, that he's with you in the valley, that he's with you in the dark times. And we will be able to care for one another in ways that we never thought possible. So, I would ask that our worship team would come out and that you would stand with me. Together we're going to read out loud Psalm 23 here on the screen. So I would ask that you would read these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That was your first reading of a journey of memorizing what we just read. You read it over and over again, and you pray that, and you meditate upon that, and all of a sudden your life changes. And so to close this time together, we're going to sing a song. Our worship team is going to bless you with a song that once you hear the words, you'll start hearing that it was written for you. And it's a new song, and the words will be on the screen, but I don't want you guys to feel pressure to sing along to it. Perhaps this is a moment where you need this song to be sung and prayed over you and spoken over you, so you can fill up. That today can be a moment that changes the rest of the outlook on your life. So as they sing, as they bless us with their gifts, I would encourage you just to take it in, just to receive it. If you need to pray up here, these spaces are always open. If you need someone to pray with you, we can do that. But if you just need to stand in his presence here among us right now, then I would encourage you to do that as well.
I'm trying to stop smoking. I'm having trouble to stop smoking.
Sure.
Here I lay my burdens down, lose my worries in your love, casting every care on you. I have carried them enough. We're not alone here within His love. Emmanuel, He is still with us. We're not alone here within His love. Emmanuel, He is still with us. We're not alone here within His love.
Everything changes after today. In just a moment, they're going to sing lyrics about mercy falling. And they're going to sing lyrics about His presence being here with us. And I would encourage you that when the song prompts us to raise our hands and lift our hands and receive His mercy, I would encourage you to encounter that physical posture, because there's something about reaching up physically with our hands that allows us to deeply connect with our Creator. So in a moment when they do that, I would encourage you. It was cool last night. It was a fun scene of our family just reaching up and receiving His mercy because His presence is here. If you need to pray, that is still an option for you. I ask and I pray, praying for you that this would be a pivotal morning for your walk with Him.
Mercy is falling, falling. Lift up your hands, receive it now. Here in the presence of the Lord. Mercy is falling, falling. Lift up your hands, receive your hands, receive it now. You're in the presence of the Lord. Mercy is falling, falling. Lift up your hands,